on the live so we can share our Twitter to our Facebook page. Paul, it should be up now. Let me check it.
All right, let me go on Twitter.
Cool.
Yo, the Twitter is popping now. I love it. Let me see.
Yeah, it should be. It's right there. You click the
yeah, I got it.
And then share it. Let me know when you got it up. Then we'll go. All right, man. I'm ready. I got my coin toss here. I got my notepad. I got to take notes.
I got my water. Got tea. Got whiskey. I'm ready for the trenches.
Yeah.
I just remembered I forgot my attitude era hat, but it's cool.
Oh, just
I don't have a rock thing. Last time you had the Undertaker poster or shirt behind you. We had like 3 of them, I think, when we did the Undertaker thing. We had a bunch of them.
Also, I love Bobby said he had the action figures. I mean, this is my office, and like I got all the Power Rangers. I got wrestling stuff. I got this. Hold on. Oh, I got this sword from the Civil War that just hangs in my office.
Yo.
Oh, man. I can tell that's the OG one by the handle on it. Yeah. I got a couple of swords. You got any sharpeners for them?
Which one?
I said, you have any sharpeners for your swords?
No. So all the historical stuff I have stays as it is. Like I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. The other blade that was over here was for the front of an M8. So it was like the scabbard for it. So I love history, so I collect all this stuff.
That's pretty sick, though.
Yeah, and toys. I'm a grown man.
Did you actually save like a lot of your action figures from like wrestling back then? I wish I had.
Yeah,
still.
I wish I did too.
Got some in box still. I mean, if y'all want, we can put this up as a prize. This is Bianca Belair's autograph. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh shit!
I can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But just saying, we got. There's a bunch of stuff here.
Oh, he's ready. He's ready. I like it. I'm with it.
All right, Bobby, it's posted.
All right, let me get my coin flip back up here. All right, here we go. You guys ready to go?
As ever.
Let's go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Stoop Life Podcast. I'm gonna quit the intros today and we're gonna get right to it. First debate of the year. If you guys haven't checked this out yet, we do a thing called the Stoop Gauntlet, which involves doing debates, sports debates, all types of debates. Today, we got a newcomer coming into here, Jay Atlas, and then we got a veteran of the game in there, Steve Taylor. Today, we're going to be hopping in Stoop Gauntlet. We're going to be doing WWE. Now, most of us that actually listen to the podcast that are part of the group are around the same age as us, so we all know and grew up and loved WWE, especially the Attitude Era. So this debate is going to be about 2 of those guys that everybody knows, everybody loves in that era and in wrestling history. So today we got a debate between, we got Jay has Mankind, which a man that we can clarify as very many names, which I'm sure he's going to do. And Steve is going with The Rock. So, guys, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the debate. I'm excited for this. And I want to say thank you guys for both hopping on, taking time out of your day and coming on. And if you guys are ready, we can just get right to it.
They are setting a tone for the new year.
It is.
So let's get to it. Let's go after it, fellas.
So this is how it works. I got a little coin flipper right here. We're going to flip a coin. Whoever wins the coin flip gets to decide if they want to go first or if they want to go second. And then we're going to do like a, Stephen A type of thing where you get to do your argument and then come back. So, Steve, since you were in the room first, we're going to let you pick. You want to pick heads or you want to pick tails?
We're going to go with tails.
All right, here we go. Flip.
Never fails.
Oh, you got an L. You got an L. Jay, it's on you. You want to go first or you want Steve to go?
First time here, underdog, so why not go first?
All right, I like it, man.
Okay, all right.
We'll let you give your thing. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Tell us why Mankind is better than The Rock and why he's the best ever. Because I believe you think he's the best ever. Maybe, I don't know, but we're gonna find out here. So you got 5-10 minutes. Hit us with whatever you want to talk about Mankind. And then Steve, you already know the deal. I don't gotta tell you. But go ahead, brother. Floor is yours, man. Let's see what Mankind brings.
So I'm going to try to do this as efficiently as possible. But in order to contextualize what we're talking about, we got to define it. We got to find some common ground on what we think greatness is, on what we think, who's more important. So we got to figure out what that looks like. According to Vikings magazine, the GOAT is defined by, 6 characteristics. It's their team accomplishments, the individual accomplishments, the impact on their sport, personal statistics, longevity of success, and their effect outside the sport. Now, I'm setting up Steve for a fantastic run here, and I'm going to prove by doing that Mick Foley still holds it down. And, Bleacher Report has their run for what a WWE wrestler or superstar is supposed to be. So their 5 categories are wrestling ability, charisma, mic skills, character, and look. So I'm going to try to hit each and every one of these points. But to do that, I have to set up the history. So I got to give y'all a quick backstory. I'm going to try to condense 13 years into about 5 minutes. So if I can do this, Steve, more power to you coming in on that one. But I got some time ahead of you. So for those who don't know, Sony, they've been around for a while to do electronics, introduced their home videotape recorder on June 7th, 1965. You know what's convenient about that? That's the day when Mrs. Foley's baby boy came crashing into the world. A star was born, and they were ready to bring him in. All I'm saying is that's a tough thing to come back from. The Rock was a movie star, but they put cameras in the house on the day when Mankind was born. So here we start. And this guy has no physical gifts. If you talk to every promoter, if you talk to, the guys in the industry, he is not what you would physically go for. He was not a product of the time. Even at a young age, he was not built to have the same level of success. Born in Indiana, raised in New York, this guy, played every sport possible. Did his best, created characters to entertain his buddies. On his 18th birthday, and the reason why I mentioned the video camera, on his 18th birthday, he went on a date with this young lady. She called him the wrong name. He had a little mental breakdown, and he started pitching this character to a friend of his because they loved wrestling. So the legend of Frank Foley was born, and he created Dude Love, his first character, and cut a promo. Did a full video package about how he was the man, how he, could get the ladies, how he was willing to endure more than everybody else, things that are consistent throughout his life and his performing time. So he was, famously hitchhiked to Madison Square Garden, saw Jimmy Superfly Snuka hit the big splash off the cage, and he recreated that. Snuka went 12 feet, Foley went 16 feet. He jumped, Snuka jumped into a canvas. Foley jumped onto asphalt covered with a couple boxes and a couple mattresses. This guy made it on his own. He had to promote himself. He had to give himself to the people, and he had to show that he really was committed to this idea because, again, he wasn't physically gifted. So he agreed with his parents to stay in college while he was wrestling training, and he would drive 5-6 hours into Erie, PA. I mean, listen, if you're going to come to the state, you got to come to the state, right? And I know it's going to come back. Yeah, The Rock was in, he was in PA as well. And that's fantastic. Kind of cool that both of these guys are, local in that way. So in contrast, we had in 1983, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, Nick Foley, Mrs. Foley's baby boy, whatever name you want to know him by, made his wrestling debut 13 years before little Dwayne Douglas Johnson was on camera. 13 years before Mrs. Foley's baby boy was out here entertaining the people. He was giving it to him, earned it. In that time, when little Dewey was still wet from the womb, he was walked backstage. He was literally brought in through a corridor where a dozen of his relatives held it open for him and said, yep, this is the next one. You know who didn't have that privilege? Mick Foley. And so what we ended up with was somebody who had to create character, who had to develop personality, who had to sacrifice to build to get to where he was. He didn't have that door open. And he went and just worked on the circuit, built his character, got his jaw busted by Dynamite Kid. Couldn't eat for a month, couldn't eat solid foods for a month. But that's when he started to think more and more and more and more and more about who he was going to be. So he started, working with his buddy Dominic DeNucci was his trainer, and they got in with Tommy D, and they were running Foley, all across the Midwest and in New York and in PA, and that's where Cactus Jack started to come in. So he started to get darker, and he realized, I got to do something special to set me apart from the rest of these roided out characters. And so again, developed a personality. His second character developed immediately. So he had Dude Love, he had Cactus Jack, met his wife in 89, 90, I think, got married, and she was like, hey man, you're better than this. You can do more than this. You don't have to be a punching bag for these, these numbnuts out here. You could be something special. And I don't know if you've seen Colette. They've been married, as long as we've been alive. That's a beautiful woman. Talented woman, and he says way out of his league. So she didn't marry him for money, looks, or anything else other than the fact that she actually loved this man. Still together to this day, 3, solid kids. And that's when Foley really started to develop. So Cactus Jack came into being, and then, instead of being that glorified stuntman, he eventually works his way to WCW, where he debuts as an opponent for Sting, the icon Sting, Surfer Sting, not Sting as we know him, not as old man Sting, but as young, just champion, just running through everybody Sting. And that's a hell of a way to come in. You come in against the champion, you come against a guy that's already established, and you've been working independence, you've been in and out, here or there, being an enhancement talent. Hall of Famers like Paul Orndorff, Harley Race, Vader, who by the time he had gotten to WWF, before Rock made his debut within, I forget what it is, but it's like the USWA, Foley had already had his ear ripped out. So, he went, did the spot in Munich where he gets tied up in the ropes were too tight, pulls himself down, rips the back of both of his ears, and for a long time it was, that's where it was lost. During the match later, Vader reached over and ripped his ear off because it was dangling. That man still continued the match, still continued wrestling immediately afterwards. Foley independently went to Japan. He came back to ECW. He worked Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and it was his time in Japan doing death matches with Terry Funk and with I know it was Ki, but another Japanese wrestler where he became king of the death match, got the attention of Vince McMahon, and then was brought in 96. Now I know I went over 5 minutes, but I wanted to give a little backstory in order to prepare for when, Dwayne, I'm sorry, he wasn't even The Rock then. So when Flex Cavana, is that what we're going to call him at this time? So when Flex Cavana was coming out with the Jerry curl. So I wanted to just give y'all a little bit of history on what it took to get to where they were when The Rock's career started. That's going to be tough to, address, but can you really say anything in terms of being brought in? Didn't have his daddy to back him up. Didn't have an uncle to back him up. Didn't have cousins to back him up. Wasn't walking around being held by Andre the Giant. He hitchhiked to a show to be there. So what you got, Steve?
All right.
That was a good intro. I'm not going to lie. But it was a long-winded version of telling us why he is an underdog and somebody you root for. I heard nothing about greatness. I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't hear a single thing about greatness. So, obviously, if we were talking about an underdog story, if we're talking about somebody who's a legend, Foley actually is. He's the best ever and the unquestioned GOAT of being a hardcore wrestler, right? That's undisputed. And it's not even like you said, based upon skill. It's just that he's like damn near indestructible. His tolerance for pain is high, and the things he's willing to do to put his body and test it to the limit is, bar none, is something that you can't even, compare to anybody else. But when we're talking about greatness, like you said, the worst thing you did was lead with defining what greatness is and then go on a 10-minute spew of not checking off any of those boxes. So all I heard about Mick Foley was he had a tough pathway to success. True. He's an underdog. Most of us are. And you didn't talk about any of the accomplishments, any of the impact and stuff. So let me unpack it for you and start with all the rebuttals. So the first thing is you talked about how he had all these different arenas that he's been to. Obviously, he's with ECW, WCW, and then WWF eventually. Here's what you left out, though. Yes, he had his big introduction with Sting, and Sting was the man at the time. He was, arguably the face of WCW, but definitely one of their homegrown superstars. The problem is Mick Foley's entire career, even with that point of him being introduced with Sting, he's been just a shadow of the real superstars and the real guys who are truly in this book conversation. Because I'll be honest with you, I know you truly believe he's as great as you say, because when you believe something, you're willing to stand out on an island. The problem is the Mick Foley Island gets hit with a hurricane every time a true superstar comes in, and he had this big head start on the Rock, 13 years, all this stuff, only for him to not even reach like a small portion of what the Rock's success and his peak was. In ECW, even when he was there, the best he's ever done is be, a tag team champion to another household ECW name. Because let's be honest, at the point in time where Mick was there, the top tier stars, most of them were still at WWF. The ones that weren't made their way over to WCW, or they were homegrown superstars like the Booker T's of the world, Sting, people like that. But even with, we'll just say, the C level stars, he couldn't even be the big fish in that little pond. So I hear all this underdog story, and it would be if like the equivalent of what Mick Foley did. Like if he was as great as you say he would have been somebody who went overseas and was in maybe an NBA G League, who's putting up 35, 40 point triple doubles. He's the person that was the equivalent of not even maybe barely scoring 20 in the G League. We put him in the NBA, and the only time he's ever seen true success is when he's on a super team where you can tag team with the Rock and Sock connection and piggyback off of the Rock success. When we can throw you in main events with the Undertaker and show how indestructible you are by throwing you through tables and stuff. Like he was in ECW, and no disrespect to ECW, because we know they did the best of what they could and they were entertaining, but they were fighting in gym arenas, and he'd be jumping off of the bleachers through a table on fire with thumbtacks at the bottom, and they still didn't even reward you with making you the top dog and a champion, and they predetermined the outcomes of these things. So I hear a bunch of why you like him, and he's honorable and he has character. When we start talking about greatness, he just doesn't measure up. And if we start to go through stats, which is another part of it, let's go through what he hasn't accomplished. Like, okay, when he is at WWF in '99, he finally reaches the apex and he's the WWF champion. So on paper, when you see, hey, he's a 3-time champion, it sounds good. The reality of the situation is the only reason he ever got the belt was because he's piggybacking off of that man, the great one, as they call him. He was the champ. You can try to dispute the facts all you want. I don't know how old you were, but I remember, because at this point, like, I was very aware. I actually had a wrestling game that year that happened, but that's the whole sidebar thing. But the reality of the situation is this: Mick Foley was never top dog and did not win the heavyweight championship and was the guy until he piggybacked off of his rivalry with The Rock when he got kicked out of the corporation, and he won the belt, yes, 3 times. But to be honest with you, it's only one championship run that stretched out through the period of the end of '98 to '99, and 2 out of the 3 times he won the belt, it was on tape delay. So it was, where's this draw? Where's this excitement and stuff? They didn't even have a live event for him to win. And the only other time he won the 3rd time was in SummerSlam '99, when Stone Cold was at the peak of his popularity and his arrogance. He decided, I don't want to lose the belt to Triple H on one of our 4 main cornerstone pay-per-views. Let's throw Mick Foley in here, because he's somebody who is great to piggyback if you already have those superstar names. I'll lose the belt to him on the pay-per-view, only for him to be the liaison to lose to Triple H the next day, which was the major part of the script. So, and then on top of that, he was never the main heavyweight champion before that point in his career at any federation he was in, and he's been tethered to all these superstar names. And then after that, he never even gets another heavyweight championship. after WWF buys WCW and you have a whole nother second heavyweight belt, you still don't give a shot. And then from there, they even split it up and have a SmackDown and Raw champion. You still don't get these title shots and these guys. I'm like, we all know that at the end of the day, popularity is not the end all be all. But when you're as great as what you're trying to claim Mick Foley is, there's no choice but to put you as the top dog at some point in time. Every single other person who is in legitimate GOAT conversations, the Rocks of the world, Taker, Stone Cold, Ric Flair, Hogan, Bret Hart, all of these guys have had multiple championship runs and they've had classic rivalries. All he's been is maybe a B plus star that you can put in rivalries with A plus stars in an attempt to boost him, only for him to somewhat, drop the ball or maybe not fully deliver. And the thing about it is, most of the classic matches we remember with Mankind, it doesn't matter, Undertaker, Rock, Triple H. I can think of classic matches that were absolutely outstanding, and he held up his end of the bargain. You know what never happened at the end of those matches? They never counted 1, 2, 3, or he submitted and won. He was the loser on most of the biggest matches he was a part of. And I'm sorry, when you can predetermine the winner and you're supposed to be this great, better, you think he's better than literally anybody in this history of the sport of wrestling, and you define the criteria, which I partially agree with, but there's nothing you can say that he measures up with any of the stuff that you claim. And to make matters worse, there's things that they assess throughout, wrestling magazines and different things like that. He hasn't cracked higher than maybe top 20 on any of these lists. I've seen lists where he was out there in these lists that they have year to year, or they rank guys, and it's like, how in the middle of his prime, if he's truly better than Stone Cold, Undertaker, Rock, even somebody like Kane, you had Sting, you had Goldberg, you had Booker T. When they were all in their prime, these are guys that were getting top 10, top 5, sometimes number 1 ranking. For a single year in his prime, he was ranked like 46. What's the explanation for that? He was in other federations and is supposed to be this top guy, and he opened up the lane of hardcore wrestling and stuff like that. Why was he never, rewarded with the best reward Mick Foley's gotten his entire career as a belt is Vince McMahon when he decided to freshen up the WWF Championship belt and get a new one. He gave Mick Foley the old one, broke it in pieces, put some duct tape together, and say, "Here you go, Mick. You're the hardcore champion." Because that's the best we can do for you, and that's the only title that actually fits. So I'm gonna just leave it there because I think you won about 10 minutes. I think I won about 10 to retort. What can you say to any of this stuff? And just know I got more.
All right.
Can we keep it going? I feel like this is a good. Unless you want to move to the next topic, I feel like we got a good thing running right now. Because if you got more, I got more.
Response. I mean, you were taking notes over there, and you were shaking your head. I want to hear what you have to say.
I want to hear that response now.
I want to hear
the
piggyback part and that last part you just talked about there. You highlighted. I seen you. I want to hear it.
Oh yeah. Just so you know, respectfully, I'm taking notes because I like what you're saying, so I got to make sure I keep everything here. Read it twice. First and foremost, let's address it. Let's kill your point because it was factually inaccurate. And I'm sorry to say it, my boy. You said he never cracked top 20, but 1999. Mick Foley was number 19. That's it. You are discredited. He beat 20. He was 19. Just factually, he beat 20. So fundamentally, that's it. You said he was never the guy. Mick Foley independently. So his personal statistics, which is one of my points for what it makes you to be the GOAT. I'm sorry, it's what it is from Viking Sports Magazine to be the GOAT. Continental Wrestling Association, tag team champion. You said tag team. ECW, tag team champion. Mid-South Wrestling, North American champion. Freelance shows, Tri-Cities tag team champion. Lou Thez Award, Frank Gotch Award, International Association of Japan. He was their tag team champion. He was the king of the death match, which is an independent award. He was the NAW heavyweight champion. He was the NLW heavyweight champion. Ozark Mountain Wrestling, North American heavyweight champion. Thailand Pro Wrestling sat up there 24/7. I'm sorry?
I said, did you just say in the mountains? He was the heavyweight champion in the mountains.
Ozark.
Oh, okay. You said the mountains.
Not just of the mountains. I'm with you though. Sorry. So Steel
It sounds
City,
believable though. I kind of think he did it.
just the mountain, the champion mountains. He
He won that Hills Have Eyes matchup.
I mean, listen, Steel City champion, TNA. He was a Legends champion, and he was their main champion for TNA. And TNA had a run. You can feel how you want about it, where they were actually starting to pull. They suffered from the same thing WCW suffered from, which was a little Kevin Nash, a little Hulk Hogan, little Jeff Jarrett problem, but he was still their guy. World Tag Team Champion, World Class Champion, Wrestling Champion.
I have a question real fast. I don't like to interrupt. You said TNA, he was the guy. What happened to TNA?
They're still around. Actually, they're partnering with AEW. They're partnering with New Japan right now. They have a partnership where they opened the Forbidden Door. And what is now created is essentially what WWE did, because for WWE, who was a stalwart, WWF, who was it's us and nobody else, anything else beyond us isn't real. AEW came around, opened that door. But before they did, TNA opened the door. They had partnerships with New Japan where they were bringing in talent and they were going, across boundaries and across borders. And they allowed people who wouldn't be the guy, like an AJ Styles, for example. You're going to say that guy doesn't deserve all the success he had because he was a TNA guy? How about a Samoan named Joseph who isn't, Samoa Joe being the guy, according to himself, who now walks around on the island of relevancy and, we the ones and whatever that is with the nephews and the family members who are just piggybacking off of other success. AJ Styles built that on his own. He was a bumper for WWE. He was a bumper for WCW. Went to TNA, and he's the guy. But a Samoa Joe, not a Samoan named Joe, not Joe Anoa'i, talking about Roman Reigns, for those who don't know at home, Samoa Joe was an inbuilt name. I mean, he did the ROH circuit, which, by the way, Mick Foley again, ROH, TNA. So ROH is Ring of Honor. So he's, Japan deep. Rock was only in one place. And he wasn't even in there long enough. So you look at his career, but there was, like a 7-year gap? Was it 04 to 2011 before he came back? He was doing, part-time shit. Foley was a commissioner. He was backstage. He was developing the women's brand. So, again, he doesn't have the titles. He does. He has titles in places where we don't think it's important because we don't think about them. But that he built other companies off of his name. So I got to ask you one question. In the Mount Rushmore of wrestling, you will put up, you said Hogan, Flair, a Taker, a Stone Cold, and a Rock. I think you mentioned Ric Flair. But what is that mountain made of? You're talking about carving into granite. You can't have a Mount Rushmore without what is underneath it. You can't have a Mount Rushmore without granite. Oh, you said dirt. Even if it was dirt, but you need that to hold you up. You need a foundation. You need a quintessential and the most important piece, which is a supportive structure that holds together all the other. Sorry, I almost cussed, and I'm going to pretend this is a kid show. The BS that goes on top of it. And what that was bone, it was flesh, it was blood, it was sacrifice, it was humility. And you know who had that? My guy over here.
Solid.
He fell for the bait, guys. I'm surprised he did that. I baited you in every single thing that I said because I knew Mick Foley was ranked 19, and that was in 1999. But you know what happened in 2003, just a few short years later? He was ranked exactly what I said, 46. And I said barely cracked the top 20 because 19 is barely there. And to quote Nelly from a song, what does it take to be number one? Two's not a winner, 3 nobody remembers. So 19, who cares? That's way down the list. And you brought up how he was the head guy, or he was, spearheading these other federations. Well, guess what? These guys actually never challenged the main top dog company. And on top of that, you had to partner with other people just to stay afloat. Well, that makes sense. I already addressed that. Mick Foley has to partner with other superstars to be relevant and to even be an A-list main event guy, only to never actually come out on top. So everything that you're saying, you just fell for the bait and fell right into the trap. And here's the other thing, and I was waiting for you to bring up the Samoans and different things. Even though The Rock, yes, he comes from a prestigious wrestling family. When he first got his mainstream appeal and he started to catch some momentum, is under the name Rocky Maivia, which was because his dad was Rocky Johnson and Peter Maivia, his grandfather. And he came
Didn't
in
want the
and
name.
obviously right, and he had Yokozuna is a relative as well. So the thing about it is, you can look at it from one of two ways. You can look at it as, he had a silver spoon in his mouth. He had everything easy. He didn't have to work as hard because he wasn't getting his ears ripped out of his sockets and stuff like that. Or you can look at it and say, hey, you know what? There's a lot of pressure to live up to this legacy, and can you actually live up to it? The answer to that is no, he didn't live up to it. He surpassed it by far, because if you look at that Samoan family and you look at the tribe of what they've created, nothing but legends. Who stands at the top? Unquestionably, it's The Rock. And if we would have made a statement like that in 1995 or 96, it would have sounded laughable. We talking about Yokozuna, who was in his prime. He battled with some of the best people like Taker, HBK, some of these other guys. And guess what? By the time we gave it another decade, which, wasn't much far removed from when Yokozuna did his thing, The Rock had already surpassed him. His dad was great. He was a tag team champion as well with Tony Atlas, and they did their thing. Even though his dad was very successful and had his own legacy in his own right, just off of name value alone and legacy and stuff, with The Rock not even being a major tag team staples guy, you can argue his tag team runs with some of the people he was paired with and some of the people he helped, boost up, i.e. a Mick Foley with that Rock and Sock connection. That was as legendary as anything, almost anything ever in the tag team division. So it's like he doesn't need a lot of time to accomplish the greatness, because Mick Foley can have a 10, a 13, a 30-year head start, and he can stick around an extra 10, 12 years after. It wouldn't have made a difference. He's just not going to hit those levels because he didn't, and he had ample opportunity. He had legendary matches with The Undertaker. They had a whole rivalry pretty much for like 2.5 to 3 years, and he couldn't even do but so much with that besides lose the Hell in a Cell match. And then you go piggyback off of that right into a rivalry with The Rock, and it was limited. You're in SummerSlam, which is a big four pay-per-view with Triple H and Stone Cold and Jesse Ventura as the special guest referee, and you win the match and nobody cares. And 24 hours later, you're not even a champion anymore. This is not markers of greatness. I understand you need dirt, gravel, the earth, water, wind, everything else to build up these things and stuff, but there's no Mount Rushmore besides the Hardcore Championship and maybe your personal list that has Mick Foley anywhere close to it. I can think of 4 Mount Rushmores with different combinations. He's in none of them unless you have to specify the hardcore division, because even when his tag team runs, he's not even making a tag team Mount Rushmore. I'm like, you're bringing in things that you like and honorable things, but again, we're not hearing anything that defines greatness. And you want to talk about somebody sustaining a legacy outside of the ring or inside of the ring. The Rock hasn't beat on both fronts. You have the Samoan family. You have somebody the likes of a John Cena who pretty much came and filled that same lane that the Rock didn't create that lane, but he definitely is the apex of it and shows you what it looks like at his peak. And then one generation later, you have somebody can, kind of fill that lane and become a superstar in their own right off of his back. We can't say that about any Mick Foley proteges or anything like that, at least not to that level. Right, and then if you're talking about outside of the ring, well, we already know his influence. Just look on IG. If you want one example, Mick Foley is a little bit over 250,000. I think he's got like 260 some odd thousand followers. The Rock has like 360 million. The impact is undeniable. He's got his own tequila. He's got partnerships with Under Armour. He even did the book thing, and they even let Mick Foley release his book a little bit before the Rock's book. You know why? Because we already know, hey, they're both wrestlers. They have this connection, right? We can build off of this momentum. They're both going to be New York Times bestsellers, but if we don't let Mick Foley go first, he doesn't stand a chance following The Rock. Just like you don't stand a chance in this debate, because it's not a real debate. It's me spitting out facts and reviewing history, and it's you giving us history that matters only to you, because at the end of the day, yes, what you're saying is factual. You didn't exaggerate, you didn't lie. Kudos to you. But in the matter of relevancy, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. Do you want to answer? Do you want to answer it?
Listen, I think we got another 10 minutes each to keep running this. I feel respectfully, I think we can keep doing this before we even go to point. Number 2, I got 10 points ready.
Talk about one thing about his rebuttal.
Mm-hmm.
You really got hyped up when he talked about prodigies. So I want to hear what you have to say about that, because he had the Rock having that he inspired, which we know a lot of people we know about. You already mentioned a couple of them, so I want to hear what you have to say about that.
So Dwayne isn't the star maker that he's believed to be. So you talk about, he's a star. Well, how does a star get there? How are stars operating out in space? How are stars independently? They're not. They couldn't be. They are built. Oh, are we doing Rihanna lyrics because she's back for the Super Bowl? Like a diamond? All I'm talking about.
I bet you Rock invited to be on stage before Mick Foley, though.
It'd be a loss.
Super Bowl.
He's gonna
ain't gonna be no loss bird. We're gonna be there too. It's gonna be nothing but W's. What are you talking about?
Steve, you were only a Birds fan this last year. That's all I'm saying. Moving on.
You a bird for saying that, because everybody who knows me knows better than that, man. Don't expose yourself there. Because matter of fact, you just keep talking. I'll be right back since we got
reclaiming reclaiming. Oh man, dang! Is this 2004? Steve walked away the same way Dwayne did. I mean, after 99. Rock walked away after 99. He was in the league for 3 years, and he had to bounce out to do a bad Scorpion King movie. Then he did Walking Tall, which wasn't a good movie. So he spent time elsewhere. So we're going to talk about legacy, longevity, and inspiration. We're talking about greatness. So what we're going to go with is we have somebody who, like The Rock. When people think about The Rock, they go, "Oh, he was inspirational because he was popular." But what was that?
It was Mick Foley's career. I just threw it over in the corner. Keep going.
Oh, okay. Well, don't throw away your shot. So what we got is, again, we got to walk away from Dwayne. 99 went to go shoot a bad movie. Most of his movies are terrible. Let's be honest here for a quick moment. The Rock has had 20 chances at films. He's had 2 good ones. I would rather watch Mick Foley's Chef Boyardee commercials than watch Black Adam ever again. No, I'm keep it real with you.
That's because you and Mick Foley would rather eat raviolis than work out and make sure you're strong and be on point. Because according to your GOAT criteria, presentation and look matters. You're telling me your old dirty sock and some farted in sweatpants is the look of a champion?
I'm going to tell you something real quick. You want to talk about socks? Let's talk about getting a sock over for a moment. Okay? Mick Foley was so talented that he got this thing into arenas. People brought signs. You know what they say about The Rock? Oh, Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. You know what they say about Mankind, about Cactus Jack, about Dude Love? They say Foley is God. Okay? They don't say Rock is God. They say Foley is God. They recognize him on such a high level for not ever being.
You know how many false religions are out there? That's not even impressive. You know how many false religions are out there? Come on, man.
You're talking about
he's a bad demigod at best. He's a bad demigod at best. Cut that out.
Again, still better than Black Adam. So you're talking about
not on Instagram because besides, wait. If you want to talk about God and you want to bring it to that level, where's his following?
So you're talking about false religions, and then you bring up Instagram? Come on, man. You think Instagram is
weird? You know why? Because guess what? Because if Foley's church tied to him with his 10%, guess what? The Rock's 10% is more than his entire following.
So you're talking
what
about
what are we talking about here?
You're talking about popularity again. What I'm talking about is
he's popular for a reason because he's better.
I love that you skipped to 98, by the way, in your argument to present why The Rock was better, because in between 96 and 98, guess who was running shit? Excuse me, kids, running the show with everyone. Foley. He ran it with Kane.
How many championships did he have? Wait, I got a question for you. Because he was running stuff, right? How many times did he even get a title shot, let alone win the WWF Championship, Intercontinental Championship, any of these belts? When did he win those between those times? 95, 96, 97? Yeah, when did he win those belts?
Any belts?
No, I'm saying...
Ignoring 10 titles?
What I'm saying, the reason I brought up 1998 was to help you out. That's when Mick Foley started getting some of these title matches. What I'm saying is, if he's so much better than The Rock, and he's had all these rivalries, he was fighting with HBK, he was fighting with Undertaker, and all these people. How many title shots did he get? And how many championship victories did he have? Did he win the Intercontinental belt? Did he win the heavyweight belt?
Foley was never.
The short answer is no, but you can dance around that. The short answer is no.
I'm getting to you. So Foley was not chosen to be the guy. He was not prepped, primed, and then booed out of arenas for not being the guy. He was loved, freaked people out. He was the only person who could come in against The Undertaker and be credible. It was the first time in Undertaker's career, because you mentioned a Yokozuna as being the guy. Yokozuna was dying when he held the title. His limited move set is kind of indicative of the rest of them. Headbutt, hip check, leg drop, Samoan drop.
So how come Foley couldn't beat him then? How come Foley didn't get a title shot, and how come Foley couldn't beat him then?
Because he wasn't projected to be the guy. Because there were bodies. There was a bias. You're talking about guys who were on steroids, right? Because do you remember that scandal? They had to start switching things up. They brought in a Foley because they knew that he would develop and enhance everyone that he touched. And every single person.
So why didn't he do it during that period? Who did Foley enhance, and why didn't he win the belt? Who did he enhance?
Kane, Stone Cold, Undertaker.
Are you serious? You can't be serious right now. Do you hear yourself? Take a time out. What did you just drink? Are you serious?
Oh, thanks for the reminder.
Oh my goodness. I'm not gonna. Oh my goodness. So you're trying to tell me with a straight face that you are giving Mankind credit for putting over and enhancing Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and Kane. You're saying that with a straight face.
I was going to keep going.
Please do, because I'm waiting to hear a name that he enhanced. Please do. I haven't heard one yet.
Owen Hart. He gave Owen Hart the rub. Dynamite Kid, British Bulldogs.
And wait. Mankind gave Owen Hart. Wait a second. You're saying that Mankind is the reason Owen Hart is a household name, not Bret Hart, who's actually bigger and better than him, not just the Hart family as a wrestling archive. It was Mankind.
First off, you would name Owen Hart before you would name Mankind, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack, or Dude Love in a wrestling list of people that you remember growing up, and not for tragedies.
No, but no. So you're missing the point here. I'm not going to name him above him. This is true, but you know who I will name above him? Big Brother Bret, because he's better. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Bret tried to develop The Rock for his first year, and The Rock still failed. He could not get his character over. He was a bust. He was a die-rocky guy full of weight heat. He was a dud. He was dead on arrival.
As much as you think that helps that hurts The Rock, it actually is a stronger point because he didn't need to be co-signed and piggyback off a superstar like Mankind did. He did it on his own and then surpassed a lot of these people.
Absolutely not. So when The Rock came back from his little knee boo-boo, which, by the way, let's talk about that for a moment. The Rock had a knee boo-boo and had to go away for a few months. You know who wrestled broken and did forever? Mick Foley. And you know what happened when The Rock came back? He joined the Nation of Domination. So let's talk about that also. The Rock's catchphrases, his name. So Dwayne Johnson, Flex Cavana. We're talking about. You ready for it? Where do you get The Rock from? Don Morocco, right? Where do you get Jabroni from? The Sheiky baby, the Iron Sheik. So he borrowed all these elements, came back and joined the Nation of Domination, which was already being run successfully by Farouk with Mark Henry and D'Lo and those guys. So he had to come back and still get a rub. Dwayne Johnson was not hitting for it. When they turned on him, that's what he needed because he had to be built. They had to develop something, and he had to take over. They turned on Farouk first, so The Rock would be the head. But he had to take over something that was already established. So you come in with a family that ushered you in through the door. You leave because everybody wants you to die. And then not, oh, we don't like your character, or, oh, boo, you're a bad guy. But we hate you as a person. You are not what we're here for. We see what they're trying to spoon feed us, a legacy that runs through the family later on. You know who walked through that door? A star? Immediately, people were freaked out. They were intrigued. They were fascinated. Foley could be anywhere on the card, steal the show. run it with an Al
They,
Snow.
they, they weren't intrigued. They weren't that intrigued like you think they were. He had a half a mask, which they thought was a leather belt going all around his face, and they're trying to see, is that a full mask? Is that a half a mask? Or is that just dirt on his face? They weren't as intrigued as you think.
That mask was to hide his face because Vince didn't want the association with Cactus Jack yet.
We couldn't figure that out. Oh my goodness! You put on one leather mask that looks like a belt tied around your feet 3 ways, and you change your shirt. You act like he was super versatile. All he basically did was change his T-shirt and pretend to get girls when your dude love. Say I'm the hardcore king with Cactus Jack and put on some little cheetah boots, and then Mankind is just a deranged one with a mask. This is not this versatility you're making it out to be. And as much as you want to talk about how the to you, how old were you when that happened? It might have been like the first wrestling memory you have. So I can't even say you're objective about this. Like at the end of the day, you can try to talk about how people didn't like The Rock. He has a family, a spoon fed. In one breath, you're saying he has to be rubbed. He has all this things going for him. And in another breath, you're saying he took time to be developed. Which one is it? It sounds pretty confusing, conflicted to me. Meanwhile, the guy who's supposedly better and making household names out of somebody, he wins no Royal Rumbles during this time. He's not getting any heavyweight title shots, let alone actually winning them. And all he is just basically a hardcore punching bag that people that just try new moves on and then pin him, and then he loses at the end of the match. Like, and then if you want to talk about, hey, The Rock had to take over the Nation of Domination, let's be clear on that. Mark Henry, D'Lo, Farouk, none of them were bigger stars than The Rock at their prime. Nobody put The Rock on their back and carried him. And in a lot of ways, D'Lo and especially Mark Henry benefited from being alongside The Rock, because even when you absolutely hated The Rock, he was the guy you loved to hate. You were getting some of the loudest chants of crowds of all time with people just saying Rocky sucks, and he was still able to recover and flip from that. So in a way, he has not the same underdog story as Mick Foley, but just because you're giving him everything, and let's be honest, the talent was always there. It was the script writers, and it was them going with stuff that they thought was going to be, acceptable the same way it was in the 70s and 80s. And in the mid 90s, we are at a turning point, which everybody can agree. The Attitude Era was the turning point. And once they just let him be him and come out with those catchphrases every week, it was classic. Interview after interview, promo after promo. Hell, The Rock is so great and so influential. One of his catchphrases, SmackDown, turned into a show. What are we talking about? Influence? Mick Foley has none of this. You're delusional if you think he's propelled The Rock, HBK, Kane, or The Undertaker. He didn't.
SmackDown was a phrase before then. Also, The Rock's popularity in 99 peaked after 98, and the 97-98 year that we're going to get into is the most important time in Dwayne's life. So, and we're going to talk about turning tides as well, because that was your whole thing was, the Attitude Era was the tide turn. I'm sure you know the night that I'm going to bring up that was the official change, the 83 weeks that WCW bragged about. What happened that turned the tide? What singular event was it that transpired where things went sideways?
It was Mick Foley went sideways. Undertaker threw him off the side of that Hell in a Cell. He crashed through the top of the cell. You said no doors were open for Mick Foley. That was like the cell door was open for him, and so was the roof, and he was slammed through it. And at the end, we had a classic match. I already said on the Undertaker cast, to me, that's the GOAT match of wrestling. I don't even think that's debatable. And still, with the GOAT match of all time, he still wasn't able to even compare to The Rock at their peak. Everything you're saying that went right for The Rock went right for Mick Foley, and every time he dropped the ball and fumbled. And oh, by the way, what I brought up to you, I didn't throw it away. This is a football I have. This is Randall Cunningham's signature, right? And I'll show you the picture I have at Veterans Stadium when I got that sign, because it might have been the year before you were born. Because some of the stuff you're talking about with wrestling, like, I don't know, like maybe you just researched it and now you think it matters more than it did. But truth be told is Foley is a legend. We know this, but he belongs nowhere near GOAT conversations. And to think he's even, forget about being better than The Rock, because that's clearly not the case. To think he's even The Rock's equal in any way from the metrics you brought up, because you said you took notes. I took some notes too, what you were talking in the beginning, because I like what you were saying. Individual success, he doesn't measure up to The Rock. Team success, he doesn't measure up to The Rock. And if you want to give him team success on, hey, he's had a bunch of tag team champions, all you got to do is look at some of the people that The Rock were tethered to for his tag team championship runs and Mick Foley, and you can see easily the legend status favors The Rock, and it wasn't to boost him up because at that point everybody was a superstar he was tagged with, except some of the people may have benefited a little bit more, but at the end of the day, everybody benefited because the fans got an awesome product that he was a part of creating. And again, the criteria that you brought up, show me where. Hey, has Mick Foley had better success? No. Does he have better statistics and stuff? No. Like there's something at the WWE FE, whatever you want to call it, they have this thing called the Slammy Awards, and it's called Slammy because of the spinoff of the Grammys, where they award people for different categories. Foley's got one. He's got one ever. The Rock's got 9. Like even when you narrow it down to these subgenres and these nuances of the sport and the entertainment aspect, even when you make it specified to just those things, he still barely cuts the mustard. Yes, he's a he's not your garden variety wrestler where anybody can do what he do. I'm not disrespecting him because everybody can't. But the problem is his role, his legacy, some of the things he implemented, they have not stood the test of time. And that was the main thing you could have lived on. If he would have had this legacy that was just outstanding, we could talk about, hey, how many other companies has he built up? Who are the young superstars that piggyback off of Lane or direct proteges? Yeah, you're talking about stuff he does behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, it's done behind the scenes. Why? So it can be brought to the forefront. If we're talking about The Rock, obviously, like I said, John Cena benefited, Rikishi benefited, the Usos benefited, Roman Reigns benefited. What are we talking about?
Not on screen. That's behind the scenes. Come on, that's behind the scenes. That's family right there. That's Famici. That's these fucking Goombas out here. I'm sorry, these flipping Goombas out here just doing nonsense. Because they and not even his blood family. It was a marriage and a friendship that connects these people, but they all get encapsulated. So The Rock benefited from a marriage friendship into the family that actually the Usos and Roman Reigns belong into because they're not blood related. And I want to make sure that I clarify that blood does not make you family. You choose your family. That's a non-political, not argumentative statement right here. I would do that as a personal statement, as like my own beliefs. So The Rock was chosen.
That's all fine and well.
But you're saying that these people benefited from The Rock. They didn't. Remember when Roman Reigns won in Philly? And Philly booed him, and The Rock came out and he was like, "Yeah, this is the new guy." And The Rock got booed by Philadelphia, which is a wrestling city. Rock's in Bethlehem.
Everybody, bro. That's actually the worst example you can bring. I went to an N1 game in 2003 or 4, and they had a halftime rap battle concert, and both of the people got booed. And they said, "How do we judge how we booed? Is who got the least amount of boos?" Philly boos everybody. We beat up Santa Claus and stuff. That doesn't speak against The Rock's greatness. That just speaks to what Philly is. And you would know that, but I guess you weren't Eagles fans back in the day because you're criticizing me saying I wasn't. We know that. Bobby knows that. PJ knows that. I know that. The world knows that. You're the only one that doesn't know it. Just like you're the only one that doesn't know Philly's not the goal.
I'm going to get real close and make sure that people know this is an intimate moment. I'm sorry that you were so upset about that throwaway Eagles line. I just wanted to get you for a moment. So, that being said, Philly doesn't boo. Philly boos Santa Claus. You know what Santa Claus they don't boo? Foley Claus. Old Saint.
Because he got his sock in it. It's because he put his sock in their mouth. They can't boo him because they tried.
You mean to tell me that Philly is muted by a sock? A singular sock?
No, I'm just saying that we can't hear it because he's got a damn sock in their mouth. They're still booing. Trust me.
Hold on. For my audience, right here, for the Stoop Life in Philadelphia, PA, bang, bang, cheap pop. Let's talk about it for a moment because he can get that over. You think that Philly wouldn't boo him if they didn't like him? Foley was loved, beloved in all faces and facets, even when he was the commissioner. By the way, let's talk about longevity because we want to pretend like The Rock's been around. The Rock, you were a fan, you're talking about, 2003, 2004. Wow, Dwayne was out here putting the rundown out. That wasn't a good movie. Be Cool wasn't a good movie. So I don't want to hear about all this nonsense. And so I don't want to get too far ahead because I feel like we're skipping over this 98 feud. And we got to talk about, again, Granite versus Mount Rushmore. We're talking about what builds, what gets you there, what sustains you, and what is painted on top. 98. Foley and The Rock begin their feud. Couple of matches here and there. Then, the summer. First off, that Survivor Series nonsense, that entire tournament was awful. Interferences on every side. This weird theatrical build up of we're building against The Rock because Foley was his stooge, was Vince McMahon's stooge, and then you get the swerve. You get the swerve at the end where it was, The Rock was always our guy, and he does the corporate elbow, we'll talk about finishes too at some point. There's the corporate what was it, the corporate bottom? That's a little sus.
No, it wasn't the corporate bottom. It was just Mick Foley was at the bottom of the corporate totem pole, which is why he never won them championships.
No. The corporate bottom was The Rock when he went to the corporation and changed his finishers to the corporate blank.
No, I know what it is. I'm just playing on words. So.
Oh, that's cool. So, but I would have talked. You mentioned the tide turn, and that tide turn happened on a little episode called Raw, TV's longest running episodic of all time, and it's fantastic. Love it. Been watching it since you were in diapers. And what I remember on that day is my homies who were like, "Oh, Goldberg's the best." You know what they did when it was announced that, hey, Mick Foley's about to win the title tonight, because it was a pre-taping. WCW flatlined. A pre-taped episode of Raw. Foley was going to win the title. We know what happened. The corporation was out. DX was out. And Foley had just beaten Triple H for a shot for the title. Or, I'm sorry, lost at a shot for the Rumble. Sorry. Everything's building. But that being said, it was The Rock with the corporation. DX is out there to defend Foley. Corporation is out there with The Rock. Vinnie Mac, Shane O'Mac, Kane for some reason. Everybody was out there. Shamrock slides in. No DQ. Cracks Foley with the chair. A brawl ensues. Everything goes sideways. Foley was about to win on his own. In kayfabe, in storyline. Glass shatters. Now, we know what happens when the glass shatters. We know what time it is. Stone Cold comes down, levels the playing field, because it was already in a high-level crowd. The crowd was into it. Stone Cold evens it out, cracks The Rock with the chair, so that way it's an even 1-to-1 with chair shots. Foley catches that pin, and since you said I might not be from that era, I want to remind you of something that happened that night. Mrs. Foley's baby boy does it. Right? He holds it. You hear that? That's real.
Yeah, you tapped it 3 times, and that's exactly how many times he won. 3 times. And then he never saw it again.
But
he never saw it again. All in the span of 1 year, and then he was never to be heard from again.
But when he won this, everybody left WCW. It flatlined. They knew it was about to happen. Yes, the announcers on the show said, if you want to watch, here's a spoiler, Mick Foley's about to win the title, because they were trying to spoil the pre-taping. What they didn't know was that everybody would leave because they wanted to see Mrs. Foley's baby boy win this title. You want to tell me that Survivor Series did those numbers? They didn't.
I'm gonna tell you what really happened. The reason why they left is because we read about this in biblical times. It sounds like God is about to come back. So the end of the days are here. Foley finally wins the belt. Let's go see if this is real, because if it is, the world might be over.
If that was the end,
I know they made pay-per-views called Armageddon, and I think people were worried about the real Armageddon happening because hell is freezing over. And oh my goodness, Mick Foley is about to be the champion after spending what, according to you, a decade and a half carrying stars and stuff, but he just didn't get the lucky breaks that everybody else gets, right? When their family is wrestling, golden children, right? You just get a title shot randomly on a pre-recorded tape, and you're basically equivalent. You're basically making an equivalent that a leaked mixtape is the reason why WCW reign stopped. And Mick Foley is the draw, and everybody got to stop what they're doing. We got to figure out why Mick Foley's the champion, or is he really the champion? Bro, that's a Mr. Fantastic reach. You're a reach.
That's a factual. Mr. Fantastic is one of the smartest men in the world of all time. Just saying. So if it is a Mr. Fantastic, your boy is.
No, he's one of the people that can stretch his arm 10 feet across the room because it's a big reach. They were not NOT tuning in. Because here's some stats if you want to go off the stats. The most, and I brought this up in the Undertaker debate, the most watched wrestling match in Raw's history, the most watched segment was Stone Cold and The Undertaker that for that very championship belt. That was what the most watched thing was. Now, Foley's had all these rivalries and stuff. How come he wasn't a part of that segment? Since what you're referring to is him being on top is the driver in popularity and spoiling storylines and all that stuff. He's nowhere near that stratosphere.
I'll give you a moment. We'll go look at the statistics. Those 83 weeks that Eric Bischoff's podcast is built on, that his books are built on, that his entire brand is built on, those 83 weeks ended when a dude who puts a sock on his hand pinned Dwayne Johnson with a T-shirt on because he was on steroids at the time and had the titties out. Man boobs. When he pinned him for the title. You know who didn't have steroid issues? Just saying.
The non-athlete. If you would have read that book right there, The Rock says, because he then said that, he already admitted to his steroid use and different things, and that was pre-wrestling. That was when he was honestly it started back in college when he was at Florida. You know, he was with Warren Sapp at the time at Miami. Maybe you've heard of that university. Maybe you've heard of Warren Sapp, stuff like that. Yeah, he was behind Warren Sapp. You know why? Just like Mick Foley. Listen, he was behind Warren Sapp, and that's the only person you can say was in his way. We can say Undertaker, Stone Cold, Rock, Kane, Hulk Hogan, Sting, Goldberg, Booker T. Like the list goes on and on about the people that were in Foley's way. Like, what are we talking about?
Not even close. They weren't in his way. They are built on him.
You brought the championship belt out and just talked about all these stats about how this was so interesting and how all this stuff ended the run. Why wasn't he built for the main event stand? If he has this great momentum you're talking about, where is those pay-per-view matches that he's headlining? How come he's never headlined the WrestleMania? We all know WrestleMania is the Super Bowl of wrestling. He has never been a headline. He talked about that was his dream. You know, the closest he got to being a headline in that is when WrestleMania 15 in Philly. I was supposed to be there and I wasn't. That was a long story, but that was a while ago. But the only way he was in WrestleMania's main event to have any part was to be a special guest referee for The Rock and Stone Cold. So again, all he does is be the shadow to the bigger stars. Like, I guess I don't want to say like, because don't get me wrong, I don't want to come up like I'm being disrespectful. Foley is a star. He's Hall of Fame. He's great. But let's be honest. He is always the star that's in the bigger star shadow because they couldn't quite get him over. You talk about all the failed attempts with the Rocks. Guess what? Eventually, it wasn't a failed attempt, and he did get over it. And he did reach that success, and he was there. He was just. You're welcome. What do you mean?
Welcome. This built The Rock. The Rock had to come back. Let's talk about the I Quit match, the ladder match, the first ever last man standing matches. You want to talk about what built The Rock? It was 98, and The Rock violated what made him.
The ladder match wasn't with him. The ladder match was with Triple H, who's another superstar, and at that time, Triple H wasn't even the A-lister that he was. So The Rock and Triple H actually mutually benefited off of that match because both of them were on the cusp. Listen,
it's incorrect.
Go ahead.
It's incorrect. So
That's
The Rock,
incorrect.
The Rock and Mick Foley, their final match after having 2 failed finishes, had to go into a ladder match. Paul White came out, chokeslam Mick Foley. The Rock grabbed the title from the ladder match because the I Quit match had a screwy finish because the last man standing match, neither one could get up. The I Quit match was nonsense because they had a pre-recording of it, which Foley took 11 chair shots to the head. They agreed upon 4, and The Rock went too far. Talk about ending a career early. And by the way, The Rock, hold up. The Rock benefited because Foley was going to retire after King of the Ring. He thought it was over, but he was so beloved. And the same thing that Roddy Piper said when he was going up against Y2J. And he said, as long as they cheer, I will crawl down here to the ring and give you my last breath for these people. That's what Foley did. He was supposed to be done. He wanted one more hurrah and was going to be out. But he was so beloved. He was so heralded by the people. So you want to tell me after King of the Ring, who The Rock have built himself on? because he didn't have it. What he had was Mick Foley. Mick Foley gave himself to The Rock for a year and a half, took abuses that he shouldn't have, went too far. The Rock went way too far and didn't apologize till years later, which is also another theme of The Rock. Like, for example, The Rock wasn't black until like 2007 or something like that. He finally told people like, "Oh yeah, my dad's black and family's Hawaiian, and that's what it is." But before,
who didn't know that though?
Anybody, not the promoter. The promotion never pitched it, so he got heralded as this champion, but he was Samoan the entire time.
Wait. So
Rock's legacy.
All right. I'll give you a pass because maybe you might have mixed up the time frame of what I'm talking about because they were all within a year of each other. What I'm talking about is SummerSlam 1998, Triple H versus The Rock Intercontinental title. SummerSlam is one of their big 4 pay-per-view events in the year.
I'm talking this title, not IC title. This ladder
right,
match.
But no, I understand that, but you're missing my point though, because 98 came before 99, and my whole point is this: at the end of the day, Triple H and The Rock were both on the cusp. They weren't at that A list, but they were at that B plus, getting ready to cross over to that headline main event superstar status. So everybody knows, at least I don't say everybody, most of the people that are familiar with the wrestling business know that what they do before they put you in that main event status, you become the heavyweight champ, so on and so forth. There's always a bridge, and normally the bridge is the Intercontinental belt because that's the second highest regard. So they put you maybe the match before the main event guys, and they put you with other guys that are on that cusp. And what I'm saying is Triple H and The Rock together helped boosted each other up with that ladder match because Triple H was in DX at the time, and he had fully taken over because HBK was injured, right? And then The Rock was in Nation of Domination, which is a whole other thing. How would you be confused about The Rock being black? He was in a Nation of Domination, so you're saying that he had to be piggybacked with other stars who were clearly and unapologetically black, and that's what the whole theme of the Nation of Domination was piggybacked off of, like Black Panthers and stuff like that. So how would nobody know he was black until 2007 when this happened pretty much a decade beforehand? Then you're kind of mixing up the time frames and stuff. Like, I understand you're trying to make your point. Like I said, I'll give you the benefit. Maybe you got my dates mixed up on what I was referring to. But what you're saying is, again, just factually incorrect because everybody knows in the WWF, at least, the biggest rivalry of that year was pretty much Taker and Kane, because that was the whole reveal that he has a secret brother, and then are they together, are they fighting each other or not? And then they team up, and then it was Taker Stone Cold, because Stone Cold had risen to the actual superstar status you think Mick Foley was in. And then he started battling with Taker, and they had their multiple championship runs. And the whole reason the Survivor Series tournament happened is because the belt was vacant. Stone Cold was the champion. He was in a glorified handicap match with Taker and Kane where they couldn't finish each other. They double chokeslam him, and Vince doesn't give either one of them the belt, so then it's vacant, and then the tournament happens. So, again, if there's all of these Mick Foley to the rescue moments you're talking about, he would have easily been carrying the Attitude Era from that point in time, and he wasn't. So what you're saying is just factually incorrect. And I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, maybe he put The Rock over. He didn't, but we'll just say we go there. How does he put The Rock over, but then The Rock usurps him and becomes bigger than he ever was while he just stands by the wayside? That makes absolutely no sense.
Your mistake is believing that he stood by the wayside. So he
wasn't at the top, bro. If he's not a heavyweight champion, if he's not the guy mainlining as the main event for the pay-per-views, he's not. That's second tier. Now 2 is very close to 1. It's the closest thing to 1, but it's not 2. And let's be honest, he wasn't even number 2. He was on shelf 2. If we're being clear, you're not understanding what I'm saying.
I don't think you're accepting the fact that being on the top doesn't make you better. So, for example, a LeBron James versus a Steph Curry. Who's won more recently? Does it make him better? What have you done for me lately versus what have you done? I'm
going to tell you why that's a terrible comparison. The reason why what you just said was a terrible comparison is for twofold. No, it's twofold. And it's a bad analogy, and here's why. One, if somebody won more recently and they're doing something to catch up, that means the other person already accomplished more. The reason why that's a bad comparison is because, yeah, Steph might have won last year, but guess what? He's got 1 Finals MVP, and that last year's Finals MVP is the first one he has. LeBron has 4. He's got 2 regular season MVPs. LeBron's got 4. And there's a strong argument he was robbed for at least another 2 or 3. And on top of that, if you're looking at the comparisons of the teammates and the stuff that he had, like at the end of the day, that's just like it's a silly argument to even make because it doesn't directly correlate to a Mick Foley comparison. And even if it did, Foley would have to accomplish more. So the truth of the matter is Foley's been in the business longer, and you can try to slice in the direction if you want. He's been in the game longer and accomplished less. You can't be better doing something longer and accomplishing less and doing it at a level like if you want to make this basketball comparison, The Rock pretty much he had a dominant run, albeit not the longest of tenure, but he got them championship rings. He put up the numbers. He's the Finals MVP. He's the guy making it happen. Foley is the guy who he's on a good team. He contributes. He's like a Dennis Rodman, if you want to be technical. Like, yeah, you may be arguably the greatest rebounder ever and one of the best defenders, and you compliment Michael Jordan, but you still need Michael and Scottie to help you along to get over. You know what I'm saying? You're not really the superstar. You're another star amongst many, and the bigger star shines brighter. That's just a fact.
So he's the quintessential granite. He's the foundation. So you're saying that there's somebody else who gets the recognition, they get the attention, they're the face. They need him, right?
No,
LeBron James.
Listen, every championship team has a guy who was almost cut and the 12th man on the bench, or the guy who barely makes a 53-man roster in football. Are you a champion? Yes. Do you help drive them and push them in practice? Yes. It's not about recognition for namesake. I'm talking about for results' sake. That's what you're failing to realize. Like, at the end of the day, the results that you're trying to attribute to Mick Foley aren't there.
What Foley did was what Steph Curry did. He saved the league.
Neither one of those statements are true. So explain this bad point. Because neither one of those things are true.
So you have LeBron James who cries and whines and he gets boo-boos and he can't play because he's got a hangnail. What you have is a mega star at this point who's developed, who was chosen, who was heralded from the onset. Foley came in as somebody who shouldn't have been ever. Now we can do it from pre or post. I just chose Curry because it was an easy reference and I can talk about why LeBron James is the bum. But when Steph Curry won his first title, it was more important than LeBron's first title. The back and forth, come on.
Bro, you're making some of the worst correlations and the worst reaches I've ever heard in my sports life.
I'm trying to solve.
I know Mick Foley has a bad ear. Do you have a bad ear and you just kind of halfway hear these beat writer stories and stuff and you just run with it? Because these are some of the most trash comparisons and analogies I've ever heard of, bro. What?
Listen, in my closing argument, you're going to feel all of it. I need you to big up The Rock one more time with the LeBron argument. That way I can shut it down later. So keep pushing because
I need to feel something because at the end of the day, like, here's the thing. I'm gonna just ask you one simple question. I don't need a long explanation. I need a yes or a no. Is Steph Curry better? Is Steph Curry a better basketball player than LeBron James?
That's there's no yes or no answer for that.
For their careers, who is the better player? For their careers, it's the totality of their careers, everything they accomplished. LeBron, apparently, according to you, being soft and missing games and crying all this stuff, is Stephen Curry a better basketball player than LeBron James for his career? Yes or no? I just need a simple one-word answer.
You can't ask a question that doesn't have a yes or no answer because you think that if you say yes or no, that makes it the yes or no answer. The reason why there's a debate is there has to be conversation regarding it. And we can run that back later.
So, all right. So, okay. Is he even as good?
Is he as good or is he as important? So, Steph Curry's revolutionized, right? He has developed a new league. He has changed the way things are. He's fundamentally shifted everything we've known before. And what comes after is built on Steph Curry. Steph Curry with the Warriors specifically. And the difference is, I think we're arguing different points, is for me, Mick Foley is fundamentally essential in The Rock, in Stone Cold, in HBK, in Undertaker, in Kane, in WWE, WWF at the time, in Al Snow, in hardcore wrestling, in Japan, in TNA, in NWA, in Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Jim Crockett Promotions, in IWA, in a host, several other ROH. Mick Foley is quintessential, team-oriented, and developed greatness on his back in so many places. He's revolutionized wrestling as a whole, but if we're only going WWF, because it's unfair to compare The Rock to places he could never have gone. The Rock could never do it.
Why would he go to ECW when he has a direct path to WWF and he's a superstar? Why would he do that? That doesn't make any sense.
He couldn't.
I'll give you this credit though. You couldn't hang what in the gymnasium where they're doing the elbow drop from the bleachers to the 3-point line? What are you talking about?
He couldn't hang in Japan. His character doesn't translate.
The hundreds and hundreds of fans in the arenas, right? Instead of the millions and millions watching him paying top dollar pay-per-view and showing up to arenas for sold-out events. Are you kidding me?
You think in Japan they had hundreds of people? Turn on to NGP. Come on. You want to tell me that Japan doesn't pack out arenas? Stadiums?
No, I'm telling you, people outside of Japan for the most part don't care. That's what you're missing. A global reach isn't we travel to that place and we have a local influence or we spread ourselves thin. What I'm saying is at the end of the day, yes, there's amazing basketball players that never made it to the NBA that could be better potentially than some of the players in the NBA. And so, for example, I'm going to ask you this. Do you know who Joe Hammond is?
No.
You know why you don't know who Joe Hammond is? I do. He's a legendary person that used to go in the 70s to Rucker Park, and he had all the money and stuff. He had all the women, the fame, the famous, the flashy cars and stuff. But you know why you don't know who Joe Hammond is? It's because unless you're deep into the history of basketball, you don't know the guys who could have made it to the league but didn't. He was one of the best. I've seen him. I'm talking about late into his life. He's in his 70s, halfway strung out on drugs. This dude was making 10 straight free throws all water. But the reason most people don't know who he is because he chose the street life over the pursuit of greatness in the league. So at the end of the day, I'm not undermining these other places. All I'm saying is this. If they're as great as you say they are, if Mick Foley has this legacy that you claim he has, everything all rises to the top. They're going to make it to the level. It's not because nobody's blackballing them. It's not because it's in some third world country or whatever. The greatness can't be denied, except in the case of you denying the Rock's greatness. But at the end of the day,
again, you have a singular argument. It's that The Rock was great on WWF, WWE. We're not talking about the fact that The Rock never performed Japan in their style. We're not talking about the fact that Mick Foley went over and did a Munich, Germany stiff match. We're not talking about that Mick Foley could go and wrestle, in the Mexican tradition. We're not talking about that Mick Foley. So you'll say The Rock's a star across the world. What you won't say is that Mick Foley earned the respect. He went to people, met them at their level, and elevated them. And everywhere he went, Smoky Mountain Wrestling was still pushing when WWF at the time bought out a bunch of the territories. There were strongholds where The Rock.
I understand all of what you're saying. So here's the question I have. So he did all of these great works, and you have multiple wrestling publications and all these different things. Why was he never awarded these awards? He was never Wrestler of the Year. He was never Best Gimmick of the Year. Most of what he did, I think what you're failing to realize is it's not the argument that I'm making. It's a singular argument. I've taken some of the criteria you brought up, and I'm using my common sense, and I'm using what I witnessed at the time. And I'm saying to you, if we go off of the numbers, that doesn't measure up. If we go off of championships, that doesn't measure up. If we go off of publications whose job it is to know this industry in and out, top to bottom, nobody's giving Mick Foley the credit that you are. And I know you're very smart. I don't think you figured out something about Mick Foley that literally nobody in the industry has ever figured out.
I think that you are discrediting his championship wins because you only identify with the WWF, WWE as like the mainstay. The WWE isn't as big in Japan.
I got news for you. Kurt Warner was a Euro League champion and CFL and stuff until he got that Super Bowl championship with the ring in the NFL with the Rams. His greatness wasn't accepted and appreciated to that level. They're like, yes, you're doing it over there. When we put you with the best while they're at their peak, do you compete at that top level? Do you?
So what you said is because you've seen it. That's why it's important. but I've seen his greatness elsewhere. I've seen his.
Wrong again. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying
Do you
is,
care about his EuroLeague win? Do you care? Because you said it wasn't until you won the Super Bowl. Nobody cares. But people like me who know the history, who run down and find these people, who love them from before they were.
I just proved to you that you don't care as much as you say. And I'm not saying you have to know every statistic, but I actually know who Joe Hammond was. And most people who do a surface level of history of basketball know who he was. Know he was a legend in his time. But because he didn't make it to the NBA, that's why casuals and that's why people like you didn't know. So your point has already been exposed. I just used another comparison to prove that point. You didn't know who Joe Hammond was because he wasn't in the NBA. He wasn't in the ABA. He wasn't in none of these leagues. He showed up to Rucker Park, and some people would say he was better than Dr. J in 1975. But you know what? Dr. J in 1975 was the reason for the NBA-ABA merger because he was out there balling in the afro. That's what I'm saying, and that's the point you continually keep missing. I don't know how you keep missing it.
So we're going to just name someone and anyone. Do you know who Tamara Fitch is?
Who?
Tamara Fitch. Do you know who that is?
Who?
I mean, what game exactly? Are we going to start playing the game of Do You Know Who I Know? Or if we're going to play on, we should have done this on Christmas. If we're going to do the Do You Know Who I Know?
I know everybody knows The Rock. I know everybody knows Foley. And I know nobody but you in my entire life has ranked him above The Rock. Nobody, not a single person ever.
So your argument was disproving to me because I didn't know who John Hammond was, but because I didn't know Tamara Fitch, or I don't know Steel, or you don't know Steel City.
You're trying to lock into a specific point. You're missing the bottom line. So I have to simplify for you to leave the names out because you seem to be getting more and more confused the more we talk about this.
What?
At the end of the day, if you don't reach the top of your field, you are not going to be as recognized as other people that reach the top of your field. You're telling us about Mick going to places that are not the top of the business and saying how his star shined bright and then he rose everybody else up. So what I'm saying is twofold. One, if he was as big as what you said, he would have been able to raise these places up bigger, or there would be some type of star name, some protege or somebody who would rise to the top. He's done neither. These star names haven't risen to the top off of the legacy you say he built, and he hasn't built up these other establishments to compete at that top level. How is this hard to understand?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, again, feuds with Stone Cold that were super important came after Foley built everybody else up. HBK.
So let me ask you a question.
Randy Orton.
Can I ask you a question?
Bray Wyatt inspired by him. Undertaker elevated by him because the Undertaker was unstoppable. That he couldn't have a match. Psycho Sid wasn't worthy. Yokozuna wasn't worthy. Jimmy Snuka wasn't worthy. But when Foley walked in and disrupted all of his Sugar Honey Iced Tea, when he had that little Pardookie, when he was a tag team champion with Stone Cold and also beat the Undertaker, when he was the man, because he was even before he held this. He elevated everybody else by being in the room. Homeboy was dedicated as being from the boiler room. He would actually, in character, spend time in boiler rooms, under the ring, in basements, just to develop the personality. He was so deep, he had to be pulled out.
And you know what came out of that basement? You know what came from all that work and dedication and character? You know what came out of that?
Yes, the Tooth Fairy, and I don't hold that against Mick Foley. It's his fault.
That's what came out of it. Something that's not even real. It actually has no personality. A sock. That's what came out.
Wait.
That's the only thing that rose to the top, and even that is not even a real person. What are we talking about today? Talking about socks?
You think that's a hit? But did we not have Mr. Rocco? Did Dwayne Johnson not have Mr. Rocco? Come on, son.
Bro, he surpassed that to the point that The Rock was so good with his presentation, with his catchphrase and everything he did, that everything he touched afterwards, the people before him weren't even compared. It's kind of like, I put it to you like this. If somebody in hip hop takes a sample of, say, like a jazz song, and they make a classic record, and that record is bigger than the original one, people are going to know, yes, this might have came from somebody else, this was a sample, but the better record and the better song prevails. Just like the better catchphrase, the better wrestler, the better legacy prevails.
Couldn't be. And I'm going to tell you this in twofold. One, you're talking about distribution is way different. You don't have to buy records anymore. You can stream it on YouTube, and for some reason that counts. What you have is Mick Foley, who when he was overseas, blew out stadiums, set the world on fire. But you know what he didn't have at the time? Distribution. Dewey Johnson came out after the Sony home camera. But guess who didn't set the world on fire before then? Homeboy had a camera in his backyard. Got world notoriety. Dwayne Johnson was brought in.
America's Funniest Home Videos gone wrong. Yeah, I know.
I mean, in terms of funniest home videos, wrestling with a shirt on because you got man titties because you're coming off of steroid uses. Actually, if we're going to talk about funny, The Rock isn't even the best in his movies, and I don't like Kevin Hart. So we're going to talk about funniest home videos. These should be straight to DVD productions. They are so bad, critically reviled. But because The Rock has a fake...
I'm going to ask you something.
Here we go.
Did The Rock do a good... Did The Rock do a good job in the Fast and Furious movie?
No, those are bad movies. Oh, family. Yeah, we got family.
I see you, PJ, you're laughing, and you should be laughing because we all know that was ridiculous. The Rock and what was that, Fast 7? He did a great job, and that was a great movie.
Those are not good movies.
You're on this island that's about to get hit with a tsunami because you're coming with bias. What are you talking about? And here's the thing. Okay, we'll go with your argument. Say The Rock did a bad job. Why didn't they call Mick Foley?
They did. He was the host of Robot Wars.
The Rock is The Rock is so terrible. Mick Foley is such a better person and better at everything he does. He touches it and it turns to gold. Why is he never hit up? They keep hitting The Rock line.
He was the voice of the boulder in the Avatar, Last Airbender. The boulder. Come on, son. Next.
We have to put him as a voice actor. Yeah, because we can't put him on camera because after 20 years, nobody wants to see that old stinking sock with a bad artwork on it that is played out.
He was on Boy Meets World. Next point. He was on Boy Meets World. Next point.
Oh, wow. We're trying to depend on nostalgia and bring old stuff back, so we're going to bring somebody that's even older than the thing we're bringing back. And it still isn't a major box office draw the way anything else is, right?
Who wants to be a millionaire? Next point.
I like where this is going here, but we gotta get to your closing arguments here. So, Stevie, we're gonna let you hit it first. You know the deal, and then Jay hit it back up. Let's close it off.
All right, cool. We'll close it out. So, listen, everybody, the truth is already established before we had this debate tonight. It's not a real debate. We decided to turn it into a debate. So, Jay had the opportunity to showcase his favorite wrestler ever, a tough SOB, a great wrestler, a legend, but nothing close, definitely nothing above The Rock. He is great in his own right. He is a legend, but it just doesn't compare. Like I said, if you want to talk championships, Foley's got 3 in the WWE that came in 1 year. The Rock has 8. And guess what? That was just with the WWF Championship. When they merged with WCW, guess what? He won that belt 2 more times too. So he's had a total of 6 championship runs, while Foley has 3 title victories total, and 2 were on tape delay. And most of the rivalry was piggybacked off The Rock. He didn't see that level of success before or since then. When we want to talk about something that I didn't want to bring up until the end, guess what? The Rock is one of 6 prestigious wrestlers to ever have a triple crown. What does that mean? It means that you have won at least 3 singles titles within a career. And the only other names that have done that, let me check. Is Mick Foley on the list? No, he's not there. I see other guys like Pedro Morales. He was a legend in his time, WWF Hall of Famer from the 70s. Bret Hart, HBK, Nash, Stone Cold. That's it. I see, has Mick Foley ever won a Royal Rumble? Not that I recall. He wasn't going to be selected to headline WrestleMania. Has he ever won Match of the Year? Oh, yeah, he's won it twice. So has The Rock. What's the difference? He lost both of his matches. The Rock won both of his matches, including one against Mick Foley. Has he ever won Wrestler of the Year like The Rock did in 2000? No. Has he ever been, I don't know, the most charismatic, best gimmick, best interviews, most improved, biggest box office draw? He's accomplished none of these things, and this is from other peers and professionals that do analysis of wrestling. Mick is great. He's a legend. Nobody has able to stay in the lane that he's created. Nobody has piggybacked. I know Jay likes to think this, but I'm sorry. Newsflash, HBK, Undertaker, Kane, they were superstars without Mick Foley. And let's be honest, all of them surpassed him. So what do we really talk about here? The Rock has everything. He has the look. He has the entrance music. He's definitely better in ring. He's more successful out of the ring. And the legacy that he's created, even by having one of the most prestigious wrestling families, he's at the top of that mountain. He's not somewhere in the dirt like Mick Foley. The floor is yours.
Okay. I wanted to put the title down in the same way that The Rock dropped his career for 7 years, and then 2 years, and then 6 years. Of The Rock's what would be 23-year career, he spent 13 of those years not wrestling. Mick Foley had a 40-year career, including on-screen and active combat or physicality. 29 years of physicality, 40 years on screen and or backstage. The effect outside the sport is obvious. The Rock has the Dwayne Johnson Rock Foundation. Check your ego at the door. Why would you name it after yourself? Mick Foley works with kids with cancer, kids with autism. He protects women through the rape or through the RAIN Foundation, such as Make-A-Wish. And, The Rock does as well. Foley is part of the Child Fund internationally. He went to Africa, saw what they did there, and then decided that he could not allow it to happen anymore. As for RAIN, he's a big fan of Tori Amos, as I think we all should be. And that rape, abuse, and incest national network survivor group is remarkable to affect people in that way. Bestseller independently writing your book, and then to write several books after, fantastic. His impact is still heard because Edge, Randy Orton, and Evolution as a whole benefited from him coming back for one more run. He gave everything he had left, and he had already given everything he had every year prior. So you have one who, as you said earlier, Mick Foley won't die. You can call it blasphemous, but to say Foley is God is remarkable because that guy gave everything he could and still gives his personality on and off screen. Each one of his iterations of his character have been flawless. Dude Love was a sex machine. Cactus Jack was a sadistic individual. Mankind was troubled and in darkness. On screen, the Commissioner Foley, fantastic. Did he not hit The Rock with his own catchphrase, pop The Rock live on television? Certainly did. In terms of wrestling ability, it depends on how you like your style. I give The Rock a 7.5 because his move is slap, slap, slap to a kip up, rock bottom, elbow, sometimes a Samoan drop, and a DDT. That's cool. I gave Foley a 6 because I think Foley is a brawler. He takes abuse, survives it, hits you with that mandible claw, the double arm DDT. He hits you with punches, kicks, slams his body into you. He's a survivor. Charisma, these two are magnetic. Both are fantastic. I will not take anything away. These are 10s all around. Mic skills, again, 10s each. Each of them, Mick Foley as Dude Love sounds different than Mick Foley as Cactus Jack, as Mick Foley as Mankind, as Mick Foley as Mick Foley. In terms of character, The Rock has been one note since he survived the feud with Farouk and then went on with Mick Foley. In terms of character, I give The Rock an 8 out of 10 because he hasn't developed. He can't change. He can't be menacing. Watch his movies. He's Dwayne Johnson playing The Rock, playing Black Adam, playing guy's name from The Rundown, playing the Tooth Fairy, playing Jumanji. Foley's a 10 out of 10. He develops, he changes, he morphs in terms of looks based on who they're supposed to be. Each of them envelops the character that they're supposed to be and looks fantastic in their respective roles. Now you would say, oh, The Rock is more of a sex icon. Sure, if that's what you're supposed to be. I mean, if I was roided up with a genetic blessing, that's fantastic. But if my purpose is to be psychotic, if my purpose is supposed to be funny, I want to be able to morph into each of these roles. What we find is that Mick Foley has given and developed and built every single person he's been with. He's been of benefit and not a detriment. Mick Foley's career may have gone further had he not taken 11 chair shots to the head from one Dwayne Johnson. His career may have gone further. He could have given more. He was going to go to a feud with Dean Ambrose up until 2012, where he wasn't allowed to because he wasn't medically cleared. This guy gave everything he had and more. Maintained a family, maintained on-screen credibility, and in every place he went, and I think what's being forgotten and will be biased against, is that he went other places and was still remarkable. an icon, a legend, a Hall of Famer in each and every capacity. I wouldn't want anybody else on my roster if I didn't have Mick Foley, because I know we're better for him. So why is Mick Foley the most important, which is my initial argument? Why is he great? Why does he deserve his place on Mount Rushmore? Because he's the foundation of Mount Rushmore. He's granite, he's stone, he's bone, he's blood, he's heart, he's love, he's consistency. And I thank y'all for your time.
That was good, bro. I like it.
Good shit, fellas.
Go for a whole nother hour here.
Yeah.
I got a question. Does anybody? My jacket was reversible, so I turned it inside out and turned my hat on back. Do you guys still recognize me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
You are. Oh man. Nah. So anyway, to finish it off, that was the first time, Jay. I'm gonna give you a shout out here. That's the first time someone has ever made Steve angry here.
I thought I pissed him off. I thought I pissed him off before, but nah, he had Steve.
I wasn't actually angry, but entertainment purposes.
Green, so you weren't green.
Hey, Steve.
I take the Eagles very seriously. We're about to win another championship, man. I can't talk dirty about my Eagles while doing the championship run.
I'll see you in the parade. So what I'm going to say is when they vote you, because it's a popularity contest, I'll hand deliver this to you. And the next time we have a wrestling debate, I'm coming back for it, all right?
Oh,
that sounds fair. I think that's going to happen. I think that could happen, which is why at the end I had to switch it to black, because one of us is going down. It's a funeral for somebody.
I was wearing black.
Nah, that was fun. That was fun to watch. Brought up a lot of memories from me. And I was texting Paul Dorn. I was like, man, these guys know too much shit about WWE.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what the hell?
They're historians, bro. Like, it's a history lesson.
Like, yo, I mean.
Well, you got to remember something. I don't know how much you guys factor this into it, but I noticed because I pay attention to everything. Jay, he's gang. What I mean by that, he's a fellow tourist. I'm a tourist, so this is what we do. The only other person he forgot was a tourist where he went against his brethren is The Rock.
Yeah,
but that's what the all about.
It would have been preferable. So Steve, you've been 4-0, right?
I guess something like that.
4-0. I mean, how does that make you feel? It doesn't matter how it makes you feel. Foley.
Oh shit, yo, I love this guy.
That's a good one.
I told you it was gonna happen.
I totally agree. You're right. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't matter how you feel. It matters how the people feel. So we'll let them vote, and they'll do the right thing, like Spike Lee said.
By the way, see all of this? This is stuff we didn't talk about tonight. I got hours worth of conversation.
Yeah. I mean, we can.
I love this. I love this. I hope people watching this know. Like, I love you, Steve. I had to build it up a little bit because I was coming from a deficit. I knew coming into this it was an L, but I wanted to make sure people I had to get some sort of excitement so people just go Rock, who the fuck Rock? Who's thinking anybody else? So I had to antagonize you a little bit. I know we had some things that kept us from.
You brought it, and you did what you were supposed to do. So kudos to you for stepping up to the challenge, because I know a lot. One thing I always say, and I love everybody involved with this, you guys, but especially the platform, because there's a lot of Twitter fingers online. So when we have a difference of opinions, we can handle like men, like adults. We can be respectful, but come in here, state your case, and present the information. Don't get keyboard fingers online and be talking and then get challenged to something and then don't do it. So Jay was actually the person who initiated the challenge, and because I knew he was serious about what he was doing, I accept any and all challenges. So I'm kudos to you for wanting to do this and not backing down and being a man about it and standing on 10 toes down. I appreciate that.
Always. Anytime y'all want to have another debate, let's talk about how Gold Dust is better than anybody else. Anytime you want to have an argument, I'll tell you why Jamarcus Russell is better than Tom Brady if you want. I'll do it. Anytime you want an argument, I'll come in just to argue.
Man. Yo, Jay, you were great, man. Thanks for coming on. Steve, as
Good to
always,
see you,
thank
Bobby,
for coming
PJ.
on.
Paul's been good.
Uh,
Steve's been good, man.
Paul, I'm gonna let you close it out here.
All right, fellas, y'all both brought it. Yo, Jay, for a newcomer, you came in, you spit some fire. I appreciate it. You killed it. Steve, always facts on facts. Always. You guys kicked ass. You set the tone for the year. I appreciate you guys for coming on. Y'all always welcome on the platform.
Absolutely what he said. Guys, next time.
R.I.P. Kobe. This is the anniversary of the unfortunate passing of Kobe, so that's why I got the Rock book in the background. I got one of my Kobe shoes there, so this isn't hot.
And yeah.
Also, R.I.P. Uncle Iro. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
All right, man. I'll get out of here, boy. All right, y'all.
I appreciate you.
All right, see y'all later. Say bye.